like, you know, you're getting old when you care more about the adult characters than the teen characters in books, and so I'm officially at that point. It's not like a red flag, but it's like a yellow flag for a book.
I hate him as a person.
It's like literally the example of, like, you know, coasting, not coasting, but, you know, being really erratic during the school year and then using the final to boost your grade. That's what this book felt like. Can I finish reading the shortlist before the prize is announced? Hi everyone, I'm Rincey and this is Rincey Reads, coming to you with an impromptu vlog, which by the time you're seeing this will not be so impromptu. But it is Wednesday, April 27th, and it is almost 1 p.m. my time. And the Women's Prize shortlist was just recently announced. And like anyone who's been watching my channel for a while knows that I don't really pay attention to prize lists. I mean, I do like on and off. Like I always check out like what the long lists and short lists are, but I don't really make content around it because I don't know, I usually have mixed feelings about it. Like it varies so significantly about like who the judges are and things like that, about whether or not the books that are nominated are books that I actually am paying any attention to or have any interest in picking up. So I never like do the thing where like every year I read the long list or the short list, or I never do like commentary around it or anything like that. But the short list for the Women's Prize was announced today, and I just like, you know, looked at the list because I was curious, and I realized that I was basically interested in half of the short list and had a lot of them already checked out from the library. So if you aren't aware, which I mean at this point you're watching this video, you're probably aware. So the short list for the Women's Prize 2022 are Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead, Sorrow and Bliss by Meg Mason, The Book of Form and Emptiness by Ruth Ozeki, The Bread the Devil Need by Lisa Allen Agostini, The Island of Missing Trees by Elif Shafak, and The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. So I already have The Book of Form and Emptiness checked out from the library. I had been meaning to read this for a while, but it's a chunky book. What was the reading vlog I did around this that I did end up getting to? I don't remember. Oh, the books that I was really excited about from last year. So I checked it out for that, still haven't checked out, and it's officially due back now in May. Like I have no more renewals on it, so I was planning on reading that one already. I already checked out The Sentence by Louise Erdrich recently as an ebook, so I have that. Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead is available as an ebook from the library, and I had been interested in reading that because a couple of people had it on their favorite books of 2021 list. I've read Maggie Shipstead before. I read Seating Arrangements and I liked it. I didn't love it. But then when I heard people talking about Great Circle, I was like, oh, that actually sounds really interesting and I kind of want to check it out. Sorrow and Bliss is available as an audiobook from Hoopla, so I could check that out. My library has The Island of Missing Trees available right now, so I immediately put a hold on that. And then the only book that I can't get access to via my library is The Bread the Devil Need. I could just easily buy a copy of that. So I'm doing a Women's Prize shortlist reading vlog. My goal is to finish reading all of these books before the announcement, and to, you know, do it at least maybe a little bit before the announcement. That way I can have this video up beforehand. We'll see what happens. But yeah, I have all of these books checked out from the library. So, and I'm actually like in between books right now. Like I just finished a book like a day or two ago and I haven't picked up anything else yet. And I was like debating about what I wanted to read. And so it feels like fate. So I'm going to do my first, or attempt, I should say, my first reading the shortlist video, and we'll see how it goes. I'm going to start with The Sentence by Louise Erdrich because that one is due back as an ebook first. Although technically, like, I can like put my book on, or put my Kindle on airplane mode so it doesn't return to the library. But I figured I might as well just start with that one first because that one's due back first to the library. The Ruth Ozeki will probably be next after that, and the audiobook I'll start at some point. So I have a project. Let's go. Hello all, it's Thursday, so I thought I would do a quick update on my reading. I am currently 40% of the way through The Sentence by Louise Erdrich, which is the first book that I'm trying to read from this list, and I have very mixed feelings about this. I've only read one other book by Louise Erdrich, and that was The Roundhouse, and I also had mixed feelings about that book. Like, the story that's always a part of the pitch, or the storyline that's always a part of the pitch, is always what I'm really interested in, and then there's always like other stuff going on, at least from these two books. I don't know if every Louise Erdrich Erdrich book is like this, but there's always like sort of other stuff going on that pulls me away and makes me not love the story. It's rather slow paced, which I try not to like be overly negative about that because sometimes a slow paced book is nice, but I should probably give you some level of a plot summary. You're following this character named Tuki, who in the beginning of the story, you find out she went to jail, and the whole chapter in the beginning is about like what happened in that situation. And basically when she was in jail, she ended up falling in love with books a lot, and she read a whole lot. And then once she got out of jail, she ended up becoming a bookseller. And so the majority of the book is following her as a bookseller. There is this customer that very frequently was at the bookshop that she wasn't a big fan of, and she ends up passing away, and then she thinks that this customer is haunting the bookshop. And so she has a lot of conflicted feelings about this. That's sort of like the main pitch of the story. However, a lot of this is just like slice of life chapters following Tuki in different situations. She's married now, and you see like things about her home life and her relationship with her husband and her husband's kid. You see her relationship with the other booksellers, and also there's some stuff going on with the customer's daughter, the customer who passed away, her daughter. And it's like, I'm intrigued enough to keep going with the book, but it's like one of those books that's just on the border of like, if I wasn't reading it for this reading vlog, there's, you know, it's right on the border of me wanting to DNF it. But it's not a super long book, but I have a feeling it's not going to be a book that I love. I did like a quick glance on Goodreads, and I got spoiled about some stuff that's going to happen later on in the book, and I'm a little disappointed about that. But basically I was just trying to see like what everyone who I like follow on Goodreads and stuff like that thought of the book, and it seems like it's pretty consistently like a 3-ish star book. There are some people who really loved it, but this is just not for me. And I just think that Louise Erdrich is not a writer for me, like on an individual sentence level and like individual like writing level. I really like the way she like constructs sentences and things along those lines, but when it comes to the way she constructs stories, I have a harder time with. So yeah, I'm gonna keep going. Like I said, it's not a super long book, so I'm hoping to finish it like by tomorrow. But okay start to this little reading project that I'm doing. Hello, good morning. It is Saturday morning, and I've spent it reading in bed, which is a thing I like literally never do. I have slow Saturday mornings, but I usually will get up, get my cup of coffee, go sit on the computer, balance my budget, because that's what I like to do on Saturday mornings. But I woke up earlier than I expected this morning. And so I was like, oh, I'll just get up and brush my teeth. And I was like, oh, I could just read in bed. So I read in bed, and I finished reading The Sentence by Louise Erdrich. This is a book I have very mixed feelings about, but overall I enjoyed it. Louise Erdrich, I think, is just going to be a writer that I'm never going to fully love her books. Like, I love the way she writes and like the way she crafts sentences and like specific scenes in books, or like there were specific chapters in this book that I really, really loved. But like as a whole, she covers a lot in her books from the 2 that I've read, but especially in this book, she like covers a lot of different characters and a lot of different topics, and it's done in a way that for me is just never gonna be a book that I adore. I need a little bit more focus, but like everything kind of had a point. And I will say, like reading the reviews, I found out that like the second half of this book deals with the pandemic and deals with like 2020 as a whole and the events there. The book takes place in Minnesota and stuff like that, so the whole George Floyd incident and stuff like that, all of that plays a part in the story. Did it add anything to the main story? I don't think so. However, I did enjoy those sections of it, but it just felt like a completely different thing in and of itself. And so it was kind of almost jarring to go back to what happens at the beginning of the book with Flora, the bookstore customer, that's what I'm thinking of, who passes away and stuff like that. So yeah, it almost feels like 2 separate stories, although again, there are like little bits here and there that connect to it. But like, I don't know, it was like a mixed bag experience for me. It was probably like 3.5 stars. There were like parts of it like in the middle especially where I was just like, I don't know if I want to read this book. In the end, I'm glad I pushed myself through it because it was interesting to see how it all wrapped up, but it wasn't the best experience for me. I have also started listening to the audiobook of Sorrow and Bliss, and I really enjoyed that so far too. I didn't listen to it for too much. I think it's like a 10-hour audiobook. I listened to about an hour of it yesterday. I went for a walk because it's finally like actually spring outside and not fake spring. So yeah, I listened to about an hour of that and I really enjoyed what I listened to so far. So I'm excited to get back into that eventually. But I probably won't do too much more reading today because I'm going to a wedding today. So I'm going to like officially get up, like officially get up and go eat breakfast, have more coffee, and start getting ready for the wedding. But yeah, so far, not a bad start, but not the best start. But I'm excited to check out the rest of the books that are on the list and see how they compare. Hello all, it's been a couple days, so I thought I would just give a really quick update. It's Tuesday, May 3rd, and I have started reading Ruth Ozecki's The Book of Form and Emptiness, and I'm actually really enjoying this one. I'm about 70 pages into the book, so this one's quite chunky. So I'm gonna try really hard to finish this one this week because it's due back at the library on the 13th or something along those lines. So technically I have 10 days to finish this book. However, I also got the Elif Shafak book from the library, and that one is due back on the same day. And at least right now, I don't have any renewals on that book, probably because other people have it on hold. And so I'm going to try to read this one, or focus on reading this Ruth Ozecki book as much as I can, so that way I can finish it and get to the Elif Shafak book. But yeah, I'm really enjoying this so far. You're following a character named Benny, whose father has passed away. It makes me want to cry constantly. Like, which, you know, Ruth Ozecki, good job, but also, man, this can be hard to read at times, but also I'm really enjoying it. At least the beginning so far. We'll see how it goes. There's plenty of stuff that can happen, but it like goes back and forth where the main part of the book is like a book that is narrating the story of Benny, and then every now and then you're getting sort of like these inserts of Benny talking. It's as if like there's a conversation happening and a book is speaking to you, and then Benny's also sitting there, and then every now and then he'll like jump in with his own like comments or questions, and it's really interesting. So yeah, I'm really enjoying this one so far. I was concerned about picking this one up because I had heard mixed things about this book, and again, like, who knows what'll happen. I might not end up enjoying it as much, but at least so far I'm like down for what's happening, which is good because it's a thicker book and I, you know, am motivated to keep going with it. But yeah, today is like a cold, rainy day outside, so it's kind of like the perfect day to be reading. I'm kind of sleepy, not gonna lie. I might like make tea or something. And yeah, I'm kind of excited to read through this book. I have like a haircut schedule for today, which I'm so excited about because I haven't gotten my haircut in like a year. I'm really bad at going to get my haircut. But yeah, I also just have like a busy-ish week, and in general like a busy-ish month. So it'll be really interesting to see sort of like when I'm able to read these women's prize books, and also like when I can do updates and things like that. So updates will probably be sporadic when I can provide them, but I just wanted to let you know that I've started this one and I'm enjoying it so far. I haven't read much more or listened to much more of Sorrow and Bliss. I am enjoying that one too, but I just haven't had the time really to go for like walks. The weather's been kind of crappy. I'm hoping that as the weather gets nicer and things like that, I'll have more time to go on walks, and then I'll listen to the audiobook more. But yeah, continuing on with the women's prize. Hello. So I'm going to be just upfront with you and tell you that I honestly have no idea the last time I gave you an update. Now that I'm saying that out loud, I realize I probably could have gone back and looked at the memory card recordings and seen what the time stamp and date was, but I didn't do that, so here we are. It's been at least a couple of days, and I finished listening to the audiobook of Sorrow and Bliss, and holy cow, that book was good. I had been hearing pretty positive things about it, but it was one of those books where I wasn't sure if it would be for me. I was like, will it be like too literary fiction-y and things like that? And I honestly didn't know anything about like the synopsis of the book or anything like that before jumping into it, or if I had heard the synopsis, I had forgotten it. I'm very good at that. So I went into it like pretty blind, and I just completely loved my experience with it. I think the audiobook is really, really well done. In case anyone is interested in going that route, I got it through Hoopla, through my library. But I think in general, this is just a fantastic novel. You are following this woman named Martha, who at the beginning of the story you find out is separating from her husband Patrick. And then you basically like go through various memories of her life, and so you see her relationship with her mother and her parents and her sister, as well as Patrick, as well as like other people throughout her life and things like that. One of the big things about the story is the fact that she suffers from a mental illness. The author never explicitly says like what mental illness she suffers from, because she says in like the author's note or whatever at the end of the book that she wasn't trying to talk about the experiences of a person suffering from a very specific mental illness. Instead, she was just trying to talk about what it's like to suffer from a mental illness, to be misdiagnosed and not understand the choices that you're making, which I thought was really, really well done, especially because, like, you know, if you watched my April wrap up, you would have seen me talking about The Maid, and one of my frustrations with that book is the fact that the character is basically, or seems like she's basically on the autism spectrum, but the author doesn't disclose that. But in that way, it feels almost as if the author was avoiding the topic, whereas this is a book where very clearly like mental illness is being discussed and is a part of the character's life. And I don't know, it was just so well done. It's beautiful and heartbreaking, but there's like a little bit of dry humor throughout this book. Like, it's very British. There are like jokes here and there, especially when Martha's talking with her sister and things like that. And it's not so much that it lightens the story, but it makes the story feel more realistic, I think. But it's also like sad, but also like infuriating. Like, the entire book is told from Martha's point of view, and you're in Martha's head the entire time. And so you see how she is processing situations, how she is rationalizing her choices, how she's misunderstanding other people's choices, things along those lines. And there were points in the book where I wanted to like shake her and be like, no, that's not how it works. Especially like when her marriage is falling apart and things like that. Like, you want her to make better choices. But like, one of the great things about that book is that it not only explores like the fact that this woman has some sort of mental illness, but it also explores the fact that like she's also just making bad choices. Like, she's just like a normal person making bad choices, and her like mental illness like is partially because of it, but also like it's completely separate from it too. And I think it also does a really good job of like exploring what it's like to, I don't know, be in any sort of relationship, not just like a loving relationship, but like familial or friendship or things like that, with someone who might suffer from a mental illness and the toll that can take and things like that. And it was so good. It was so good. I wasn't expecting it to be that good. I'm going to be completely honest and just say that I didn't have like high expectations for any of the books on the Women's Prize shortlist, because I usually don't do well with shortlisted books, because I'm just like, there, you know, judges' tastes vary so much, and so every year you never really know what batch of books you're going to get. This is probably what feels like the most successful experience I've had doing this, and now I understand why people do this on an annual basis. But yeah, I loved Sorrow and Bliss, and it'll probably be on my favorite books of the year. And I honestly don't know if I would have picked it up if I wasn't doing this little like series, so that's fantastic. So yes, I finished that. I have a little bit more to go in the Ruth Ozeki book, like maybe 100 pages or something like that. And I feel like I'm making like pretty decent progress. It's May 9th? Yeah, it's May 9th. And so I have about a month to go until the prize is announced and things like that. And so my goal is to kind of finish this by the end of May, which I think is possible because I have 3 more books, but I might need to like roll it over into June, and that's fine if I do, because I do need to order one of the books because I can't find it at my library. Yeah, that's my little update. I'm really glad I decided to do this project right now.
Hello, it's Thursday, May 12th, and I have just finished reading the Book of Form and Emptiness. Yes, that's what it says. Reading it in the little screen thing was hard because it was backwards. Man, this book took me on a roller coaster of emotions. Also, I'm sitting in my basement right now because it is 90 degrees here in Chicago today, and I was literally getting a headache from the heat. So I came to the basement where it's nice and cool. Yeah, I totally get the divisive opinions on this book because there's a lot going on in here. And so there's a lot of things I really loved about this book, and there's lots of things, not lots of things, there are some things that I could see why people don't like this book. I think overall for me this was a positive reading experience, but not the best reading experience. My phone keeps going off. I probably should have turned it off. Oh well, too late now. Yeah, overall this was a positive reading experience, but not the greatest. I went through like waves with this book where there were times where I was really enjoying it and I wanted to pick it up to see what was going to happen, and then there were plenty of times where I was just like, I hate everything that I'm reading right now. and would put it down for a really long time. By a really long time, I mean more than a day. And so, yeah, it took me a little while to get through this book, which I think is also fine. This book is really sad, and so, like, there were multiple parts throughout this book where I genuinely felt like crying. I think part of it is because I lost my dad, and he died 7 years ago. So, you know, it's still relatively fresh, but not super fresh, but, like, this brought up a lot of, like, emotions dealing with grief and loss that I could relate to. But there were other parts of this book where I was just like, I am not in love with this. There's some like philosophizing that happens in this book, and that's not like my favorite thing to happen. Like, there are just like parts of this book that are just like theorizing about what's real and what's not, and what's the purpose behind certain things and whatnot. And yeah, that never gets me very excited, to be honest. The other thing that really got to me that I didn't enjoy, which, spoilers, ahoy, there's basically a character in here that's Marie Kondo, and like, I think she was given too much time in the book. Like, there's like entire sections where it's just like you're reading a chapter in the tidying up book, and I'm like, do I need to be reading this? Is this really adding a lot for me? Not really. And they literally take like things that happened to Marie Kondo and put them in the book and discuss them, and I was like, again, not adding a whole lot for me. But this is like a really beautiful exploration of this mother and son who are dealing with this extreme amount of grief in very different ways, and it's like so sad and tragic, but also at the end it ends up with like almost a happily ever after. And like, usually that sort of ending would bother me, but I think after so much sadness in this book, I was just really glad that these characters had a happy ending. So yeah, I think it's still a 4-star read for me. It had the potential to be a 5-star read, and there were like certain aspects where like Benny is hanging out with his friends where I'm just like, ugh. Like, you know, you're getting old when you care more about the adult characters than the teen characters in books, and so I'm officially at that point. So yeah, I have finished another book off the Women's Prize list. Next up, I'm going to try to read the Elif Shafak book, because technically it's due back at the library in like 3 days? 4 days? What's the date today? Oh no, it's due back at the library tomorrow. Maybe I'll try to like speed read it, but it feels very unlikely. My May has been crazy, and so I have not been reading or spending as much time consistently reading, but maybe I'll just hold on to it for an extra week and see if I can finish it next week. Not sure what I'm going to do yet, but y'all only have to wait for the jump cut to figure out what I end up doing. Hi. It's been a while since I've had any updates for y'all, because wow, May kicked my butt. I honestly am not completely sure how long it's been since I've recorded an update. It's been a minimum of a week, but probably closer to 2 weeks, and that's how long it took me to finish another book. I've not been getting a lot of reading done in the month of May because there's just a lot of life happening, not in a bad way, but just a lot of things happening, and so haven't been reading very much, which is not great. I now have an overdue library book, which it's fine, I can deal. But I finally finished The Island of Missing Trees. This was really lovely. I really like Elif Shafak. I really like the way that she writes. The thing about this book is that I never felt like compelled to like sit down for extremely long periods of time to read this. I don't know if that was the book or me. It's probably me. But I always enjoyed my experience while I was reading it. It's a very sad book. You are following this young girl named Ada, who is half Greek, half Turkish. Her mother's Turkish and her dad is Greek, and her parents grew up on Cyprus. And so you learn about like some of the history of life in Cyprus and the conflict between Greeks and Turks. But some of the story is also told from the perspective of a fig tree, which is really interesting. And there's some like really interesting things that Elif Shafak does with that, and like some of it provides like history on the island. Some of it is just very like nature-based writing, so if you're someone who really enjoys like nature fiction or nonfiction, I think you would enjoy this book a lot. But yeah, it's really like beautiful and moving, and explores some interesting things about like life and history, and the way that the history of the generations before you can impact you, how those things are kind of passed along even without realizing it. And it's a really interesting like family saga, but also a really interesting look at the history of things happening on this island. So yeah, I really enjoyed my experience with it. I apologize for my low energy. It's been a day. There's a lot happening in the world, which I won't get into in this video because that's not the point of this video, but
definitely impacting my reading. But anyways, I have The Great Circle checked off from the library, so that's next up on my list. But I also need to finish reading for the Chunky Chapter Book Club, which I'm very behind on. So that'll actually be my focus for like the rest of the month. And then my goal is to read The Great Circle and, oh my gosh, I always forget the name of the other book because it's less popular. But yeah, those two are the last ones on my list. And I'll check in again eventually when I finish those. Crossing my fingers that I can actually finish this in time to get this up before the Women's Prize Women's Prize winner is announced. Hello all. Alright, I started reading Great Circle by Maggie Shipstead. This is the fourth book, I don't know what's happening anymore, in this Women's Prize series, and so I've started this one. It's quite chunky, so it's going to probably take me a little bit. I'm hoping it'll only take me like a week. Anyways, I'm going to be completely honest with you. I didn't read the synopsis of this book, and I feel like I have no idea what's going to happen. So the story begins in like a somewhat modern day, and you are following a girl named Hadley. And basically like Hadley's parents died in a plane crash when she was a young girl, like under the age of 10. And so she ends up in the care of her uncle, who is a Hollywood director. He like doesn't know how to take care of a kid, and basically just starts like putting her in commercials and things like that. And so she ends up becoming an actress, and she ends up getting cast in like what's basically like a biopic movie about this woman named Marion, who also died or got lost in a plane crash. Hadley like read a library book when she was younger about Marion and like related to it because it also had to deal with like a plane crash situation, like her parents, and really attached herself to that person. And then when she got the role for this movie, it felt kind of like fate and stuff like that. And so the first like chapter or like section of this book followed Hadley in modern day, and then the second section that I just finished basically jumps back in time to the early 1900s, and you see sort of like a family history leading up to Marion. And I'm going to guess that this book is going to go back and forth in time between Hadley's story and Marion's story. But yeah, there was just like so much happening in that second. Like the first section made sense to me because you're just following Hadley. The second section felt like so much because you're not just following like Marion, you're following like generations before Marion even existed, seeing all the stuff that led up to, you know, her life and her family's choices and things like that, which, you know, can be relevant, but like when a book is like this long, you're like, okay, is this necessary? But yeah, I'm here for the ride. This is a book that I did not have on my radar at all. I had read a different book by Maggie Shipstead years ago called Seating Arrangements, and I thought that book was fine, but I didn't really think much of it. And then this book ended up on multiple people's favorite books of the year last year, and I was like, oh, is this actually good? Like this, I don't know, like Seating Arrangements just felt so like okay to me that like I never was like, oh yeah, I definitely need to read another book by her. I'm excited to read it for that fact alone. Like if so many people didn't have this on their favorites list, I probably wouldn't have bothered picking it up, but they did, and now it's on the Women's Prize list. So I'm gonna keep going with this, and I will keep you posted on my thoughts as I make progress. Hello all, I've just come back from a walk. It's my lunch break. I took a quick walk, and now I'm about to eat. But I thought I'd also do an update since I'm sitting outside because it's lovely out. Anyways, I am currently 17% of the way through Great Circle, and I'm not super enjoying this book. Last night I had a free night, and I was like, okay, I'm going to just like sit and read for a while and like try to get through more of it so I can really make a proper assessment on what I'm feeling about this book. And it's not like grabbing me, and so I like went on to Goodreads, as I usually do when I'm not enjoying a book, to see sort of like if it's me, if it gets better, all of those different things. And people really love this book a lot. However, I also saw that it was nominated for the Man Booker Prize. I don't know if it was longlisted or shortlisted or what it was, but like me and the Man Booker don't get along super well. Usually books that are nominated for the Man Booker are not books that I love. So like usually like if a book is nominated for the Man Booker, I will just ignore it and be like, yeah, this one isn't for me. It's not like a red flag, but it's like a yellow flag. for a book. And so now I'm like, I don't know if I'm actually going to like Great Circle very much. But I'm intrigued enough to see sort of what people love about it. Like, the writing isn't terrible. I just don't really care very much about the characters. There's also lots of like side tangents about various historical things, and I'm like, I don't care that much. Yeah, I don't know. Not loving it. This is probably my least favorite out of the books that I've read so far, which is almost all of them. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Hello. Welcome to an update from a weird angle because I don't feel like holding my camera. I am continuing on with Great Circle, and I'm close to the halfway point in this book, so I thought I would do a quick update. I spent basically the first half of this book debating about whether or not I wanted to actually continue on with reading it, because I couldn't figure it out. And I think I'm going to keep going. The problem is I don't think I'm actually going to like it. Well, maybe I'll like it by the end of it, but I know for sure I'm not going to love it. So, the modern day storyline with Hadley, this actress, don't give a crap about it. Like, I think if that was a separate book unto itself, I would be very interested in it. But everything going on in the past with Marion and her family and her situation and learning how to fly and all this other stuff is significantly more interesting to me. But even that, I don't like fully love either, but I am definitely more intrigued by it for sure. I think the problem that I'm coming to now is that we got a brief glimpse of Jamie's perspective. Jamie is Marion's twin brother, and he has been like mentioned over the course of the book while Marion has been providing her point of view. And the few things that we knew about him was that he loves animals, to the point where he became a vegetarian, and he also was into art. And there was like very little else that was provided. And then all of a sudden you get a section where you find out that Jamie has gone to Seattle for the summer. From his perspective, he kind of did it to see if he could find his dad or anything along those lines. But that didn't work out, and then he ends up like meeting a girl, and this girl comes from a very rich family, and you see like all this stuff happen. I was like, I actually want a book from Jamie's point of view, because I actually think Jamie's the most interesting character, or at least the character that I'm the most interested in, I should say. I do think part of it is because like Jamie is very like innocent, and I just think he seems very sweet, and I just want to know what he's doing all the time. And especially because like him and Marion seem to have a very complicated relationship, which I also find very interesting because like they're twins who, you know, lost their parents and were living with their uncle, and so they basically only had each other for a significant portion of their lives, and yet somehow over the course of time they've become kind of estranged from each other. Like they both kind of have gone off on their own path, which I think is fascinating because like obviously like not every sibling relationship is amazing, and I don't expect all siblings to be best friends, but I would think that when you've been through something traumatic like that, you would cling a little bit closer or work a little bit harder on that relationship, but I don't know. So anyways, I also just really hate everything that's happening in Marion's life, which is also like part of my complicated relationship because I'm at the point now where her and Barclay are just becoming a thing, and just I hate him as a person. Because he's one of those guys who thinks he's a good guy, but is actually extremely controlling and has like very narrow point of view of like what women should be, but also is like attracted to Marion for not being that type of person, but then doesn't allow her to be who she is and all this stuff. And it's really weird, and I don't love it. I get it to a certain degree, but I don't like get like what is Marion's deal with him? Like, why does she like him so much is my question. Anyways, all that to say is I'm gonna keep going on with this book. Kind of just want to sit in my chair all evening and read and like just power through this book as much as I possibly can. I don't think I'll be able to finish it tonight. I've actually been reading this book on my Kindle because I checked out the ebook version of it because this book is kind of a chunker. And let's see what my Kindle says I have left to read. Almost 6 hours. It's 5 hours and 51 minutes. There's a chance I can cut that down a little bit, but it's unlikely I'll be able to finish it tonight, but maybe if I really focus, I can try and do it. So we'll see what happens. But I kind of just want to like finish this book at this point because I am intrigued enough to see what happens. Like I can DNF this. I can DNF this book. I don't want to DNF this book at this point in time, and I kind of just want to see this one through. So yeah, we'll see what happens. Hello.
It's the next day. It's been a long work day, but I'm done with work and I finished reading Great Circle. I didn't finish it last night because genuinely, I could have theoretically stayed up past my bedtime to read this book, which in a different life I would have done. But now I am in my mid-30s and choosing to do that comes with consequences, and I didn't want to deal with those consequences this week. So I was like, it's not worth it. I weighed the pros and cons. It wasn't worth it. Man, this book kind of won me over in the end. Like, I don't know. It's hard because, like, it took me a little bit to read this book. And so, like, I felt like every time I read a section of this book, I had a different experience with it, or a different reaction to it, I should say. And I think it depended on, like, what the book was choosing to focus on. There was more Jamie in the story, significantly more Jamie, which was very exciting for me personally. And you get to see a little bit more from all the other characters in the like past timeline, so to speak. And I think that really helped a lot. In the end, I still did not care at all about Hadley and the modern day storyline. I recognize that like story-wise and the way the plot like sort of goes down and things like that, there are things that are like revealed kind of through the present day storyline and all that stuff, but it still didn't feel like worth it for the rest of the stuff. And yeah, like I had kind of a mixed bag experience, but by the end I was like really moved by some of the things that had happened, and so I was like, is this a 4-star book for me? It's like a very low 4-star book, like very barely past, like literally the example of like, you know, not coasting, but, you know, being really erratic during the school year and then using the final to boost your grade. That's what this book felt like. Like, the last sections of this book really boosted how I felt about this book. So, it might be a 4-star book. But yeah, just to get into some spoilery stuff with this book, because I need to talk about it. One, there's a lot of, like, sex in here, and I thought it was like kind of weird to a certain degree that it felt like everyone in this book is basically just either related to Marion or related to one of the two main characters, Hadley or Marion, or like in a relationship with them. Like there's very few characters that make an appearance in this book that don't fall into one of those two categories. There are some, but they're like very incidental characters. Even like Hadley, the actress's agent, like barely makes an appearance and things like that. Like these people don't have friends, which maybe was done on purpose, and like we're purposefully following very like lonely, isolated people. But it felt like that with everything. Like even Jamie, like any characters that he interacts with that you get to see for more than just like a scene are only like lovers or relatives, things like that. Like it just felt like that for everything, and I'm just like, I don't know. I think because there was just so much sex in this book, I was very acutely aware of that detail in a way that I wasn't with other books that I read. Like whether or not a character has friends isn't necessarily something like I'm actively thinking about when I read fictional books, but because it felt like the characters in this book were just constantly having sex, I thought about it. So there's that. But I actually like really enjoyed everything with the past storyline, so everything with Marion, and like she was such a complicated character. I can't say that I enjoyed Marion as a person like if she was ever a real life person, because it just felt like she was constantly making bad choices, but I really enjoyed following her storyline. And honestly, like I found a lot of the side characters significantly more interesting than her. Maybe just because they felt a little bit less damaged to a certain degree. Like every time we were with Jamie, I was so excited and things like that. So yeah, I don't know. This is a wild reading experience and not what I expected at all. But I'm glad I read it, ? And I'll probably pick up more from Maggie Shipstead, which is not a thing I ever thought I would say after reading Seating Arrangement. I very much thought she was an author who was not for me. Turns out not to be completely the case. So it is Thursday, June 9th, and the Women's Prize is going to be announced on Wednesday, June 15th. So about a week away. And so I'm like, can I finish reading the shortlist before the prize is announced? Possibly, because I only have one more book left. And the saga of this book. So it turns out like this book is not going to get delivered to me until June 30th. Why it's going to take Barnes & Noble that long to get me that book, I don't know. And so I'm like, you know, now that I finished Great Circle, I'm like, I just bought the book on Kindle. It was, you know, $5. I'll eat at the cost. I don't love buying things on Kindle because I don't like giving money to Amazon, but you know, it rarely happens, so it's fine. So I bought the book. According to Kindle, it'll take me like 4 to 5 hours to read, like their estimated reading speed and all that stuff. And so I'm like, I can do this. I can potentially read this book and get it done. And can I get a video up before the shortlist is, or before the winner's announced? Maybe. We'll see what happens. But I think that's going to be my new goal for this weekend. Although I do have other things I need to do, include like being an adult and whatnot. So like taking care of stuff. Your girl has a lot on her plate. And now is adding more things on her plate and adding like these arbitrary deadlines. Is this a good idea? I don't know. Hello. So I did it. I finished reading all of the books from the shortlist. It is Sunday and I spent a decent amount of this weekend reading The Bread the Devil Need because it was a relatively quick read. It's the shortest book out of all the ones on the shortlist. So I was able to dedicate some time reading that, and I'm conflicted on how I feel about this book. In this story, you are following a Trinidadian woman named Alethea, and you find out from the very beginning that she's in an abusive relationship. She's been with this man for a number of years, at least 5, I think. They live together, all this stuff, and you find out that he is physically abusive towards her. And you basically just get like a glimpse at her life and also the things that have happened to her in her past that have kind of led up to this point. Now, I will say, like, you know, obviously there's trigger warnings for physical abuse in here, but there's a lot of trigger warnings for this book. It talks about physical abuse, sexual abuse, incest, child abuse, like child sexual abuse, things like that. So like, and this book gets very detailed and very graphic at times, which was very uncomfortable for me to read, which obviously is kind of the point too. But if you're someone who can't handle really graphic depictions and writings about abuse, this one is not a good one to pick up. So yeah, like I said, I read this entire thing over the weekend, and so like obviously like this book is relatively like engaging. The way the book is written, it's told all from Alethea's point of view, and it has like her dialect and things like that, and so it feels like a very immersive story. But at the same time, like this is a really like disturbing book, and it's also like difficult to read because like Alethea is a woman who has like a managerial position at a clothing store, and so she's not someone who's like lacking opportunities, so to speak. Like one of the difficult things as someone who has luckily enough never been in an abusive relationship or anything like that, sometimes it can be difficult to wrap your head around why someone stays in those relationships. Like I need to say this like in a way that's like the least judgmental as possible, but like for me it's harder for me to understand the situation because you don't realize how entrenched people get in those relationships and things like that. Those are things that it's really difficult to understand, and like especially in this book it feels really, really difficult to understand because as an outside observer, for me, I was just like, you have money and you have a job and you have people in your life who recognize that you're in an abusive relationship, who want you to get help and to get out, and yet she still didn't. And so yeah, I'm not going to talk too much about the way things progressed in the story. There's a lot of like really big things that happen towards the end of the story particularly, but like yeah, I don't know how to feel about this book. Like I think that it was a really good book exploring the topics that it's exploring, but like I don't know if I can necessarily recommend this book to people because it's so dark. Not so dark, that's the thing. I mean, like certain parts of it are obviously like dark, and like reading about that much abuse is like difficult and things like that. But like the book itself doesn't feel dark, surprisingly. Alethea is a really interesting character. She's really complicated. Like she's definitely making some bad choices in her life. But like one of the things I had a hard time with is like I just never really fully understood the motivations. I think part of her motivations come from the fact that like she comes from an abusive family, and so there's been generations of abuse going on there. She also comes from poverty and things like that, and so some of it is just sort of like what's ingrained in your system when you are abused since you were born, basically. And so she's like very like aware of like what's happening to her and what other people think and all this stuff, and yet there's like a level of disconnect happening there. So yeah, I can like understand kind of why this book was nominated for the shortlist, but it definitely feels like a very different style and different type of book and all this stuff from every other book on the shortlist. Like now that I've read the entire shortlist, I felt like throughout this entire period, like I could really see like, okay, I get why these are shortlisted, and like all of the other ones felt kind of similar in like either theme or style or something along those lines, and this is the one that feels
the least like the others, which isn't necessarily a bad thing, but it's just really interesting to see. Overall, I'm glad I read this book, but I don't know exactly how I feel about it. So yes, like I said, today is Sunday. The winner is going to be announced on Wednesday. I don't know exactly what time the event is or anything along those lines, but I'm going to assume it's like in the middle of the day my time, since this takes place in the United Kingdom. And so I'm pretty sure I'll be at work. Like, I have to go into the office on Wednesday, and so I'm pretty sure I'll be in the office when the winner is announced. So I might do like a quick reaction to the winner. I honestly have no idea who's gonna win. I'm not like the type of person who like tries to pick who's gonna win book prizes or anything along those lines, because like the vast majority of the time, like, it's all just about preferences, you know? And so it's hard to see like a clear winner to me, because it's all about like what you want from a book and what you want from the winner of this prize. Like, I don't know what the motivation of these judges are and things like that. But I think especially with these books, like I was saying before, like, there's so much in all of these books I see as being like really good, really redeemable. Like, I feel like the shortlist is like a really strong shortlist. Like, there's nothing that's like extraordinarily better than the others and not one that's like extraordinarily worse than the others. I feel like this shortlist is really competitive with each other, and it's just going to be about like what the judges want from their winner. In terms of like my own personal ranking, I would put like Sorrow and Bliss and The Island of Missing Trees, I think, towards the top of the list. That would be sort of like my first tier. My second tier would probably be Great Circle and The Book of Form and Emptiness. And then my bottom tier might be The Sentence and The Bread the Devil Need. But those like bottom two tiers, I feel like I could kind of switch those around a little bit and it would still feel accurate. So yeah, it's really just like my top two are Sorrow and Bliss and The Island of Missing Trees for sure. But I really think like Sorrow and Bliss was like a really fantastic reading experience for me. So I think that's might be the one that I'm rooting for. But like, again, I wouldn't mind, or I like completely understand. I won't be surprised by the winner, because all of them just kind of feel like, yeah, you deserve it. Like, it feels like every book on the shortlist deserves it. You know what I mean? So yeah, I'm like really excited that I actually read the entire shortlist before the prize was announced, because this is not a thing I usually attempt to do, and I didn't think I could actually do it, but I did the thing, so that's nice. So yeah, I'll probably check back in one more time after the winner's announced, just to wrap up the video, and we'll see what happens. Hi, hello, it's Wednesday, so I thought I would look up who won the women's prize. I'm home from work, and I honestly almost forgot that this was happening. But let's just do a quick Google and see what's happening. Okay, women's prize for fiction 2022. Ruth Ozeki. Whoa. I mean, her book's really good, so I get it. But I didn't think she would win. Interesting. Like I said, kind of surprised that Ruth Ozeki won. Because it wasn't my like absolute favorite out of the shortlist personally. And I've heard like mixed things about it overall from people, so I didn't think it would be like a clear winner for the judges. But reading like the quote, it says like the book stood out for its sparkling writing, warmth, intelligence, humor, and poignancy, which like the book definitely has. Like, I think out of all of the books that were shortlisted, it's the only one that has like some level of warmth and like hopefulness to it. It feels like, no, I think the Elif Shafak does as well, but I think because of like the epicness of the book, because it's so long, it explores those emotions in kind of greater detail. It says, a celebration of the power of books and reading. It tackles big issues of life and death and is a complete joy to read. So yeah, knowing those like sort of parameters for what the judges were looking for or what they really enjoyed in the Ruth Ozeki book, it makes sense that that one won. So yeah, congratulations to Ruth Ozeki, the person who will never watch this video. So yeah, let me know down in the comments below what your feelings are on the women's prize and the shortlist, as well as the winner. If you've read any of the books, feel free to leave comments about that down below as well. I'd love to chat with y'all about these books. So yeah, that's all I have for now, and thanks for watching.